Welcome to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy is a veteran U.S. Navy SEAL, a former protective officer for the CIA Global Response Staff, founder and CEO of the Able Shepherd Program, a husband and father of 4, and a personal friend of mine. Now here's Jimmy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. I'm your host, Jimmy Graham. We got BK on the controls over there, and we're doing something a little bit different. This episode is, I got my buddy, Zach Norris. What's up, Zach?
How's it going?
I'm good, man. I'm good. As you guys know, because you've probably been around for a bit listening to us, is that September's National Preparedness Month. So National Preparedness Month, we've got a whole line of stuff coming. It's funny, Zach, I've got these little charge packs that are, it's in my car. Do you know what these are? It's like, it's small. You could charge your phone, but what it's made for is it's got jumper cables on it.
Oh, sweet.
So you hook it up to your battery. If it's dead as fried chicken, you hook this thing up and it starts your car. Like, you wouldn't think so.
That is really cool. Yeah.
And we needed it, last month, like this past month. And I was like, I need a video for next month, because I'm gonna post that stuff and just hit people all of September with, hey, what kind of preparation stuff do you need? So when we connected again, and I know you from church, known you for a while, and from the apprenticeship program, right?
Yep.
And this is a different kind of preparedness that I'm not too savvy. BK knows this. I am not the IT guy. I am not this guy. I understand enough to maybe prop some questions, but I'm looking forward to learning a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
So let me just give you a quick intro. And Zach Norris is the owner of Lamb Telecom. It's it's IT solutions for businesses, but you specialize in churches and nonprofits.
Yep.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Cool. You want to take it and kind of set us up. What's the stuff that we should kind of know? And as I ping up questions, I'll hit you.
Yeah, totally. That sounds great. Well, I appreciate the intro. Yeah, long story short, we do all sorts of IT solutions for businesses, and a lot of what we run into happens to be in the territory of cybersecurity. It's been a major, buzzword, if you will, and I hate that term, but unfortunately it is a major buzzword these days, just strictly because of the fact that there have been so many strange attacks, password leaks, and all sorts of just craziness going on in the world these days. And unfortunately, that's something that we run into a lot, particularly with churches and nonprofits, because a lot of them aren't really prepared for that.
Yeah.
And so in the spirit of preparedness, it's gonna be kind of interesting to go over some of this stuff. And there's certainly plenty of things you can do to protect yourself, but it just happens to be that it's just a challenging space that you may not be able to keep up with the cyber adversary.
Yeah. And
you might just have to have a fallback plan. And
what's the motivation for somebody like you, this cyber adversary?
Yeah.
I read up in adversaries and what's the motivation, all that kind of stuff, but I just don't really know. Like, what's the motivation? Churches don't have a lot of money. Little small private schools don't have a lot of money. A lot of individuals. So where's the motivation? Why would they attack a school or a church?
Yeah. So it really turns out that it's basically a numbers game at that point. They are trying to get as much data as possible in order to either monetize that data or steal from those individuals that might be in some sort of a group. It may be a church, for example. I go to church, I tithe, I'm sure you're in the same position, of course, and so doing that, my data is transferred across some sort of platform, whether it be maybe a push pay or simple donation or a donor box, whatever that could possibly be. Mm-hmm. The data is going to go across that platform. And you have a list of donors too. Usually churches will have a list of those donors, and oftentimes they keep tabs on however much you have donated so that they can provide you with a statement at the end of the year of how much you did donate. And so in that case, what they're really looking for is, can we get that list of donors? Can we get the high rollers, for example? Yeah. Can we go after them personally? But it may just be that they want to extort some sort of an organization. So churches have a big community involvement.
Yeah.
Any sort of a scandal or an issue with the church usually can make the local news, of course, but may even make the national news depending on how large the church is. And so if that church is compromised in some capacity, that may make national news. And if they have some sort of a ransomware attack where they can't get into their systems and they're stuck and they're just sitting ducks there, it's going to be a bad month while you try to figure out how to negotiate with some sort of a cyber adversary, and they might be able to extort that church for several $1 million in some cases. Or if it's something where maybe it's not as bad of an attack, you might have $50,000, $100,000, but they're usually trying to extort that information. So
the data, in order to monetize it, is what I'm hearing.
Certainly could be that, but in addition to that, also to get that organization to pay ransom to get control of their systems again.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that could happen to a small business too. And I can't remember the statistic, but it's something like, if you're a small business, almost 60% of them shut down a year after some sort of attack like that. A breach like that and a compromise where you have a major issue with your reputation can completely shut down a business.
Yeah.
So
not to mention, I mean, we've talked about this recently. It's like things are so tight when you're just trying to get after it. If you're a small business, man, it's not like there's huge margins where you're like, oh, well, if we get attacked, we can just lose 50 grand. It's just not a thing, right?
Yeah.
So going in it and saying, hey, is it going to be, paying the bills and trying to do the thing that's going to get us past the tipping point, or a firewall improvement with tens of thousands of dollars or whatever? And I guess you can probably talk about that.
Yeah.
It's just not even on the radar when you're just in the trenches. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, what about cyber? You're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I'm
Yep.
trying to pay the bills and feed my kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the challenging piece of it, is just the finances.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult to justify an expense like that at the very beginning, but it's almost like you want to pay for better food to fuel your body better, and in that way you want to pay for better services to maintain the health of your business and quite frankly, the cyber health of a business.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the, would you say threats?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about a couple of threats. I know we sort of talked a little bit about that, but I mean, in particular, when it comes to churches, I'm a true believer in spiritual warfare, and I do believe that is definitely a battleground that some of these churches end up having to fight. And so oftentimes their main target, just because the enemy might, put a head on them, I guess. And so that's definitely a major threat, and something to be aware of, but not necessarily to be scared of. And again, in preparedness in general, it's something to be aware of, but it's not meant to frighten you. Like if your car battery goes out, for example, you shouldn't be scared of that, but you should have a backup plan. Why not?
We really like the term readiness.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because preparedness is like, you're a prepper.
Yep.
Readiness is just like, okay, we're kind of ready for this. And it's take some steps and get back to living your life.
Yep.
People are like, well, you're in this you must be really paranoid. I'm like, you don't know me not even a little bit. Like, I'm just living life and doing my thing, right? But yeah, it is wise to be prepared, to be ready for this stuff. And now it's like, it's almost proactive as opposed to reactive.
Totally.
Like response, active shooter response. We say active shooter readiness.
Yep.
Be ready. You know it's going to happen again. Don't know where.
Yeah.
What happened? You took some preparations. Now you're ready and you deal with it.
Oh yeah. Having just a plan in place is hands down one of the best things you can do. Is just being prepared, having the conversation about it, and at least bringing the topic up. Because if something happens, you want to know that it happened.
Yeah.
If you don't know it happened, you're really screwed at that point.
Yeah.
And they can get in there, they can sit on your systems for 30, 60, 90 days and might be undetected. And they can make a strike at that point too. So it's almost as if you've got someone maybe planning a threat on a building, walking around, kind of a threat actor that might be planning how to breach or how to enter into a facility or whatnot, and cause harm. It's very similar to that. They'll usually watch. They'll kind of wait a little bit.
Casing.
Yeah.
Just casing the joint.
Yeah,
right?
It's very interesting.
But internally in the inner workings of your systems.
Yep. Yeah, and they'll blend in many cases too.
Yeah.
If they have the credentials for a user who is within a business and they've gained those credentials, they can log in just like any other user.
Yeah.
And many detection and response systems can't actually identify that it's not a real person. It might be that they just get to sit there, get all the data, and get out. They're really walking through the front door at that point. It's pretty crazy stuff. And so that's kind of one of the things where you have to have those proper tools in place too. And when it comes to churches, nonprofits, and anything of the like, you generally get into a situation where there's not enough money to afford some of the higher end tools. So how are you trying to prioritize what you've got? So, yeah.
In come the questions. Firewall to keep bad actors out of your network. Is it a firewall issue?
It could be.
What's a firewall?
Yeah, it's basically, it's kind of like having a lock on the door, more or less.
Okay.
I think that's the easiest way to describe it. Is you got a little bit of a lock on the door. You're going to be blocking some known threats from coming in. Really just, it's kind of line one of defense generally when it comes to a network. And even your home internet will have usually a firewall built in there to kind of keep some of the really bad stuff out. So you can certainly add things on top of that that are going to do a little better. But it's like, imagine you lock the door at night.
Yep.
That's kind of step one. Step two would be you got an alarm system. Step three, hopefully you've got a firearm or some sort of lethal protection in the event that you've got to protect your family.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Okay.
But yeah.
There's more questions, but I want to get to some of your I know you're
Sure.
talking about threats, and
Yeah.
you're talking about some solutions and next steps. So I want to see what you're going to cover, because when I hear dark web, I've read some books. I know nothing.
It sounds scary.
It sounds like
Yeah.
I don't want to know about,
Yeah.
but it's like you do. It's like that facing evil we talk about. It's like you got to be able to look at it if you're going to face it. Like if
Yep.
you're going to fight it, you got to face it, right?
Yeah.
So some people are like, don't look at it, don't look at it. I'm like, no, let's look at it. Let's understand it, and let's get after it.
Yeah, and the dark web, it sounds scary, but in reality, it generally just ends up being an internet that other people access that usually we don't. And so what'll happen on there is generally, kind of like we talked about before, where they might take that data of maybe a donor list, for example. They might sell that data on the dark web to people who are looking to purchase it to cause issues, for example. And that's generally in the form of personal identifiable information, PII, which is a lot of the information that is associated with you that makes you you. Maybe it's your address, it could be your social security number in more unfriendly cases. But usually your name, your date of birth, and stuff like that. Just to have kind of a profile on you. Most people can find that online anyway, though. So it's usually a matter of selling a list to some people. And unfortunately, there are several programs that have already been written that people can just download, and they can run the program, and it will try to brute force enter into certain applications that might have your password associated with it. So if they're trying to log into your bank, they might have your information. They might just try to keep trying passwords over and over and over again. And it's just an artificial intelligence that's doing it for them. They really don't even have to lift a finger in some cases.
Wow.
So, but most of the time that's kind of, it's become a little bit more outdated to do that. And it's certainly more common now that people are trying to walk through that front door like we were talking about before, where they'll kind of lurk on the system for a little bit and get your credentials through some sort of means.
So what I'm hearing is if I'm an organization, say I'm a church, is it on the church as a business? Is it on the person, all the individuals? We always say, we the people starts with me, the person. Because if you've got all of this, and then this person's got a compromised app, and then they come in and they interact.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious answer would be both.
Yeah.
And is that the deal? Like everybody's got to take precautions individually to protect their workplace and their home.
Totally, 100%. I would say that it's really on everybody to have good cyber hygiene, if you will. And similar to what you teach, it's everybody in the organization that's responsible for security and making sure that everybody is safe in the organization. It's not just up to one person to figure that out. It's not up to the IT guy at the church to figure that out.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah, I know.
Because it is. It's like we say safety
Yeah.
culture. What's a safety culture? Well, a healthy safety culture would say, whose job is it to protect this place? And everybody simultaneously would say, mine, right?
Yeah.
And that's got to be that. That means
Yeah.
don't prop doors. That means don't do this. That
Totally.
means I'm the eyes and ears. That means I'm the guy reporting. That means if it's reported to me, I'm going to take action.
Yeah.
But now it's in the IT space as well. That's just the one I'm not as comfortable with.
Yeah.
So that's why the Uggs.
And that's really the least expensive way to keep safe. You can get training for any sort of licensed user or staff member, team member, however you might put it, in an organization. Usually, for even an organization of a couple hundred people, you can purchase training solutions for like $100 a month. And something like that is the least expensive way is a well-trained staff that knows not to click bad links, that knows general cyber hygiene, like I gotta change my password and here's why, not, oh man, I gotta change my password.
What about the
They always do
password
these updates.
programs? Is that like a thing that you recommend? Like I've seen
I love those.
1Pass and all those others?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it, because if you don't have something like that, you end up either writing something down on a paper, which I have had some clients that have done that. We've cleaned a little bit of that up. Or if it's not written down on the paper, you might end up with someone who just uses the same password that might be I love Jesus 2024 exclamation point, and something like that is very easy to predict. I mean, it's one of those things where if they get a couple of those characters or whatnot and they're able to figure out about what that password is, that's where you get the people walking through the front door. So the password managers allow you to use obscure passwords like XYZ, 123, and obviously it wouldn't be in that order, but just mix match of different characters, numbers, and special characters and whatnot. So yeah, and it really just is one of the best things that you can do. And they're fairly inexpensive too.
Yeah, Scholar is losing their mind about MFA.
Yes.
Multi-factor authorization plus a password.
If you do not use multi-factor authentication, that is something that you need to do right now.
Now, what is that on everything? Yeah. On everything you go on, is it an application that I could get that's multi-factor thing, and that does it across the board, or is it every single interaction?
I would argue on anything you possibly can, make sure that you have multi-factor authentication enabled. Many organizations and platforms will almost force you into it. Like if it's your bank, for example, they're gonna have to send you a text verifying that it's actually you. But just having 2 points of failure almost. You could have someone over in North Korea try to log into your system, but if they don't have access to your device, they're not getting in because they don't have the code to get in. So it's really, it's one of the most easy things that even just a general consumer can set up. And there's apps like Google Authenticator, Microsoft's got one. There are several of them that you can use. All of your accounts should have some sort of form of that if you can.
So then there's the other question for the conspiracy theorists like me, right? You've got, how safe is that? Because people are like, hey, I'm getting rid of this app because the Russians own it. I'm going to this one. I'm like, brother, if you think any of these apps are safe, you're high. Because I've been in classes, through the CIA where they talk about, and this is 20 years ago, right? 15, 20 years ago. They're going through this stuff, and I'm like, and some military too, military and CIA, I'd say both, some 20 years ago, some 10, whatever. But you're looking at it and you're like, you could do that then. Like, for example, getting a hold of that phone, and now the phone's, you go to shut it off, it goes off, it's completely on. Now it's actually activated the camera, like all this other stuff. So I'm just that guy that doesn't trust any of it. So is the Google stuff that much safer? Because I just heard yesterday that the Google stuff is like, oh, you're on Google. Okay, that's all being read. I think isn't it all being read?
Unfortunately,
is it all being sifted through, and is it being protected at all, or just having a heyday with my stuff?
That's really the issue. Is unfortunately you can do everything you can, and much like you can do every security precaution you possibly can from a physical standpoint.
Guy still walks to the front door.
Someone might walk in, and you get that crazy event where you're like, holy moly, what just happened? And that's totally possible. To that point too, I can't remember the name of it. I believe it's called Pegasus or something like that. There was it was a software that was created to basically, you could spy on anything with just a matter of getting, something sent over to a phone. And so to your point, from what the CIA had mentioned, even 20 years ago, stuff like that totally exists. They can get whatever they want. And I'm hesitant to say this online, but the government can get whatever they want.
Oh yeah.
So it is what it is.
Right?
So you will not be able to circumvent
been
that.
sitting there with guys where you're sitting there, you're talking about something, and even the green light comes on. And like, why is the camera running right now? Like, I didn't touch it. The camera turns on, it starts running. Well, that's just because somebody messed up and didn't put the code in to make the light not come on. Like, it could be running right now. Like, this could be, being recorded right now. And I am very careful about this, and I think that is a takeaway from like at home, is don't allow your kids, and anybody, don't take your phones in the bathroom, right?
That's fair.
You know, having kids, some teenage girls, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, leave it outside. In worst case scenario, if you do take it in there before you're getting in the shower and all that, throw a towel or something over it, just because there's cameras both sides. Like wherever that thing is, that's an online image. That can be a bad deal, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so now you got me thoroughly scared. Now you got my attention. So there's there's people lurking out there, bad actors that want access to my data, to your data, to monetize it, to just get whether it's ransom, right? So we'll give it back to you, but you pay us this money.
Yep.
Or we're just going to grab your data and then farm that out, and somebody else is going to do the work, or they're going to take, I'm guessing, smaller, less work. They're just going to sell it to them, and they're going to do that.
Yeah.
So solutions. Let's talk solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, all of this comes down to really just good cyber hygiene in general. And so regularly performing an assessment of where you're at is incredibly important. And I know that you guys are a big proponent of that just from the physical side with Able Shepherd. It's incredibly helpful to at least just monitor what's happening and understand where you are. Where are we missing things? Where are we maybe even overpaying on something that we might be able to reallocate somewhere else? And
what's regularly? You say regularly assessing.
Yeah.
Your cyber health.
I would say
hygiene,
as much as you can, but at the minimum yearly, maybe doing a reevaluation of where you are. And that's even from a personal standpoint too, not necessarily from a business standpoint, but you might want to go back and clean passwords up if you've got a password keeper or whatnot, or if you are just all over on the internet, you're able to kind of clear some of that data, some of those saved passwords. A lot of applications will force you to redo that every 3 months, and that's a good way to make sure that you're at least having a little bit of rotation. Some people, there's actually mixed reviews on rotating passwords too. Sometimes if you've got a rotating password in an organization, you might just change like a 2 to a 3 in the password in the next one, and then to a 4, and that can cause challenges as well. So people might be less excited to be a part of that, unfortunately. But that's certainly a way that you can do that. And it's just like going to the range and shooting and just keeping up with it.
It seems very similar, right? So it's the discomfort, like going out of your comfort zone to miss. Great, man, I'm trying to get the thing done, so now I got to reset this again. Think up some other. I use kids' words, like kids make, little kids. You got kids?
I do not yet.
Okay, they make up words, and you're like, perfect, because that's not a real world. Because I remember the databases they were saying about going through these digital versions of like phone books or encyclopedias, whatever. All these words are there to be farmed and tried. Right? Is there any association with your name, with your lineage, with your
exactly
and all that stuff? Try to build that what do you call it, avatar of Jimmy Graham. Well, what could his passwords be? But if the word doesn't exist. Right. So, anyways, that's
exactly.
That's interesting.
No, it's totally good, and it's unfortunately it's not very fun, and I think we're all kind of under that. Like even working in IT, I'm not really a big fan of going in there and doing the clean out. Like it's a lot more fun to turn money into noise at the range.
Yes.
But certainly it's important. So the other thing too, and we kind of touched on it as well, is just continuously training staff. If you are a leader of an organization, especially an IT leader in an organization, to make sure people are just on top of it. You can see kind of the things that are coming in. And the scams are getting very sophisticated, very, very sophisticated. I had one that I just found fascinating a couple of weeks ago that was sent to me. It was an RFP scam, and it looked pretty off, but they created a website for it. They created a LinkedIn profile for it, and then because it was an RFP with a company.
What's an RFP?
It's a request for proposal. It's usually what will be put out for like a government contract or a large contract.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I thought it was like a PDF or something one of the little acronyms in the IT world.
Totally. No, and so unfortunately, they even compromised the email accounts of, and multiple email accounts, all of them, of the organization that they were claiming to be pushing the RFP out for. And so the other thing too is you can't email that organization and ask, is this legit? because if you do, you're just going to get the message back from the hacker
Right.
that says, oh yeah, of course it's legit.
Yeah.
You have to call in that case. And we're getting to a point with AI that's a whole other discussion to where you may not even be able to call and check on something like that, because you might get an AI generated voice of someone who works there who says, oh yeah, it's totally fine. So
What? This is insane.
That's
So-
that's
okay.
a whole other rabbit hole.
This is my speed. Beekeeper. Have you seen Beekeeper? What'd you think? I loved it because it's, you know what I'm talking about?
I have not seen it.
You got to see it, right?
Yeah.
So it's Jason, what is it, Statham, right? Is that what I say his name? You know, the mechanic and what's his other stuff, Fast and Furious, all this other stuff. It's exactly this. There's a woman and she goes in and she's entrusted with millions of dollars because she's, you know, some kind of fund. It's not her
Yeah.
money and she's a trusted person and all that stuff. And this hacker, exactly, room full of dudes, kind of young go-getters, and they just take everything, and then she kills herself. And
Wow.
then he, I guess Beekeeper is supposed to be this program with the government. That's our listeners be like, yeah, Beekeeper. Some government program above everyone you know about where they just go out and whack dudes. So now this guy's going in and just wrecking IT dudes.
Oh my
that are
gosh.
criminals, right?
Yeah.
So like I think everybody, people like enjoy the whole. I'm vulnerable to this. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing anybody can do. So
Yeah.
to see Jason Statham blowing up buildings and yanking people off bridges,
Yeah.
there's some kind of satisfaction that's probably not in the Bible. Anyways, or is either way. So okay, sorry, didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's absolutely, that is one of the things that I think worries me the most about the state of just cybersecurity in general.
Yeah.
Is the AI introduction to that.
Yeah.
Not only are
Yeah.
they able to do things quicker and easier without really lifting a finger, but now that old message that you might have gotten from the Nigerian prince that had a lot of mistakes
Oh, yeah.
on it, it's got no
way
mistakes
better
because
now,
they've got ChatGPT now.
Yeah.
And so they can type it in and the English is sophisticated,
Yes.
perfect. You can kind of recognize a little bit of something on
Yeah, it's
there,
a little off or
something's
something.
weird. And obviously if someone's asking you for money online, you should always check that. That's
It's back to predator and
Yeah,
protector.
exactly.
It's exactly what it is. People
Yeah.
are just preying on people. And
Yep.
even I remember like Elon Musk's book, dude's weird as the day is long. But there's something about him that's a protector,
Yep.
and he's like, man, this is dangerous. Like,
It
this
is
like
very,
this is
very dangerous.
He thinks
Yeah.
about this and goes in at a deeper level of like sees the possibilities,
Yeah.
and agrees, as far as I know, in the book,
Yeah.
that most people should be protected from this coming storm.
Yeah.
right? And I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
right? For whatever it's worth, it's a book, it's a whatever, but it's the same
Sure.
language. It's just
Yeah.
it's a new battlefront.
It's terrifying. There's weird stuff happening with it. And even actually, did you hear about the, I think it was KnowBe4, the cybersecurity company KnowBe4, they had it was an employee that they hired. This guy was a North Korean cyber adversary, who was able to spoof his face. So on Zoom calls, it was spoofed to someone else. He had compromised like passport or ID credentials to use to show that he was a citizen. He was hired through, I think it was 4 interviews, was hired and made it onto the team. And they ended up sending him a laptop, and fortunately they have some quarantine and probation rules and whatnot that you're not going to get the keys to the kingdom if you're employee on day one. But I think it was within like 15 minutes they found out something weird was happening, and so they shipped this laptop out to the guy, and it was it got plugged in at in a way where they could access it from a remote location, and they were able to get into the system, and they started doing funky stuff. And unfortunately, the cybersecurity team at KnowBe4 was able to figure that out.
Wow.
They realized that something was weird, and then there was no response, and then they ended up shutting it down. I think he was trying to load some malware on there, actually.
Oh wow.
But he got hired. Like a North Korean with no association with the US whatsoever was able to get hired just strictly because he had been able to use artificial intelligence to his advantage. It is crazy. And this is 2024. That would not have happened in like 2023 probably.
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been possible. So that it just seems to be a crazy scale up of how this technology is being used.
That not believing. I just saw something. It was a commercial or something that said, don't believe your eyes. Like what you see is not the truth anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at a person, you think that's a person. You're talking to them. You're hearing a voice back. The scam that that I heard recently. It's been a couple months or something of the. Your wife calling you, and I've been in an accident, and I need money, and it's her. It's her calling, and it's whatever, and then you sending money to pay the thing so she can get a tow truck, whatever that ends up being, and now it's hang up the phone, call her back,
exactly.
And she's like, "What are you talking about? Like I didn't call you." That's crazy because who wouldn't bust out their credit card if their people were in trouble?
Totally. Yeah. You got to be calm in a situation like that. And be a little bit suspicious if there's something that seems crazy.
Yeah.
Like if there's something very far out of the ordinary, like an accident like that, generally you're probably not going to get a call that seems like that in the middle of the day. So just be calm, hang up the phone and call back. And if it is real, you better go help your wife.
I think it may.
Most times.
My family, in particular my kids, might be better off than most in this particular case, right? Because I'm not kidding. If I lock the door and I go into the store, like they're out there and a little bit older now, so they're just hanging in the car, they want to listen to the radio or whatever. If I come back and it's Christian, he's in the front seat, and I'm like, unlock the door. And he's like, do the sign. And I'm not going to do the sign because then I'd give it up, right? Do the thing. And I'm like, it's me. And he's like, I don't know it's you. Somebody could make their face look like you. And I'm like, open the door. And then I end up doing the sign. I was like, I'm not doing it. He told me not to do it.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a silly sign. So I'm like, man, I'm going to do the thing. And then I do it. He's like, unlock.
Yeah. That's fun.
Somebody could have put your face on. They like watch Mission Impossible. They could have put a mask that looks like your face.
It's only a matter of time.
While you were in the store and then come back out.
It is only a matter of time.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. So,
okay, next steps. So where does that leave us?
Yeah, definitely. And quite honestly, if it's just you as an individual, the next steps are, again, password hygiene. It's Preparedness Month. Like, just take the time. It probably would only take you 30 to 60 minutes to run through this. I know it's not fun. It's not as bad as doing your taxes, but
when you say run through this, how? Like what does that mean? What takes 30 to 60 minutes?
It would probably take 30 to 60 minutes to just go through and look at all the passwords that you have for the major applications you use, particularly bank, maybe your benefits packages for work, maybe it's your computer password. It could be something as simple as that. But that is incredibly important to just go through, look at all that. The other thing too is if your credit isn't locked and you have no reason to have it unlocked, just lock it. It's free and it's incredibly easy. Just lock it. Then nobody's able to use it.
I'm sorry, so locking what? What is that?
Locking your credit.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
Make sure nobody can use it. And that's easy too. And if you have some sort of an identity theft solution that you can use, it's insurance. Again, they're not always going to pay out. They are in the business of keeping your money when it comes to insurance. But the best thing you can do is try to get some sort of insurance in the event that someone has stolen your identity, your credentials, or whatnot. It would not be uncommon. Also, just keep looking at your credit card statement. If you see something weird on there, report it. There's no problem with calling up the credit card company. They are paid to be there. So you might as well talk to them and ask them and say, hey, this was not me. Can we do some investigation in this? And they can usually tell you, well, that was made out in Louisiana, so I'm not sure why you living in Colorado would have had this charge. And so they'll reverse stuff like that. So just keep an eye on it. That's really the biggest thing.
I just had that happen like today.
Did you have something?
They caught it. Yeah, they caught it. They're like, hey, we locked your card. And I'm like, well, what's happening right now? It's like, well, I don't think you bought like whatever, thousands of dollars of barbecue.
Probably not.
And I'm like, actually I did. I was like, we got an event coming up, right?
Oh, okay.
So we had to run it, and I was like, but they're like, this doesn't seem like something that you're out. It's out.
I want to go to this event.
Right? Yeah, you should come. You should come, and it's going to be worth it because it's Seth's Barbecue. What's up? So one of our guys started a business, and he's spot on, right?
Yeah.
But it was a chore, but I appreciate the security part. I didn't appreciate it this morning when I was trying to get stuff done, but it was several, like 4 times, whatever, and then going back and forth and getting on the thing, and it takes extremely slow because it's their thing walking through it, and then having to go online, search it to make sure it was the thing to authorize it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, now you may do it because you called it good.
Yeah.
You did it and it went through and it's accepted, So.
Yep.
And
whenever
it's
you have
got
to
to be
do
that way.
though,
It's got to be that way.
You just got to think, like, if you have to put all this effort in right now, okay, cool, you spent another 5-10 minutes on it, oh well. But if that was a fraudulent charge, you're going to be a happy man or woman, depending on if you're listening, right? You're going to be very happy that you were able to go back and look at that and say, all right, this was not real. And if you're a business or if you're a church in particular, it's a little bit more different because you're generally going to have a staff that you've got to take care of. And so really, like, the biggest thing is reach out to an IT professional. Even if you are an IT professional at a church, reach out to someone. Ask them what they're seeing because you probably aren't seeing it all. Yeah. I would be shocked if there was someone who knew everything. And quite frankly, I certainly don't. And I actually usually bring in another cybersecurity expert with me when we have some sort of a cybersecurity consultation. We bring multiple people into that discussion because it's just such an ever-changing landscape and not everybody can keep up with everything. And so whether that cybersecurity professional is me or just someone else, your local guy that can come in and look at it, like, have them review the current systems that are in place. That is definitely something you can do. Usually someone can take a look at that for free too.
Is IT professional, that's a broad term, is every IT professional cyber
If you can
savvy?
have a cybersecurity specific professional, that is better.
Yeah.
But if that's not available to you, an IT professional is just fine. And again, I am not specifically a cybersecurity professional. I am a broad IT guy, and I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. But again, I bring in a cybersecurity guy with me on most of those discussions because I recognize that I'm not going to give them the best advice just on my own. It's going to be better to have someone who's really, really invested in that world. And so if you have like an IT staff at the church, of course, they can reach out to someone and certainly figure out if there are cost savings in other areas as well. Generally, you can look at more commoditized services like phones and internet, for example, that generally are going down in price. You can look at those and say, all right, if we save some money here, we can probably beef up the cybersecurity over here. And that might be a thing in your budget. Like, let's say maybe we cut down on eating out this month so we can purchase a water stash, or maybe even like some MREs or something like that in the event that we've got to be prepared for a bug out, right? It's allocating those funds properly. That's another thing you can do.
So as we're closing out, we're coming up on time. I want to, I've got a bunch of notes, but as a consumer, as a businessman, can you give me three? I know there's a ton. Could you give me three places of where do I start? Like the 1, 2, 3 for home, 1, 2, 3, is it the exact same? Is it a little bit different?
Yeah. Let's see here.
What do you got?
Yeah, I would say 1, 2, 3 for home. Again, passwords, just clean them up. That's going to be number one. Number two is going to make sure you've got the MFA, multi-factor authentication, on everything you possibly can. And number three is just make sure that you are monitoring everything. And just keep up with it and don't fall behind, because if you stop looking at stuff, it's not going to be good. And then as far as a business goes, it really is similar, and it comes down to having a plan, putting a backup and disaster recovery plan in place. If something is potentially going to go wrong, be sure you have something in place to make sure. And written too. That's important as well, because when it gets crazy, you do not think straight. And if you've got a checklist that says, we've prepared for this, this is this, and this that we're gonna do, that is definitely step one for a business, is put in a plan. Step two would totally be, again, reevaluate the tools that you have, ensure that you are being protected on all fronts. And step three, in no particular order here, train your staff, make sure that they know not to click on bad things. So,
See, a lot of similarities in that it's people, because you can do all this training. Let's say one person does the wrong thing and you're back to zero.
It's always the weakest
and
link.
Now everything's gone. So getting your people, that assessment, if we've been maybe not as, what'd you call it, cyber hygiene, not as clean as we've been, then hire somebody like yourself.
Yeah.
You can take over from there and say, hey, I'm going to come in. Maybe I bring some with me. Maybe I do this. There's possibly an assessment or a training for the people, then an assessment. Let's see what we got. See what we're working at, because it's fair.
Exactly.
We do assessments, right?
Yeah.
An assessment tool that says, okay, this is what I'm seeing, and there's some things that I'm going to recommend.
Totally.
Fair enough?
Yep.
What's that? I'm sure it varies from, from the size of the business. Okay, so haven't been the best with my security stuff. I want to bring somebody in, do an assessment, find out what I'm working with, get some training for my people, and then time commitment, money. Say I'm a small business, and I know if this was a multi-million-dollar business, it could be days, weeks, whatever.
Yeah.
But if I am, a smaller church, I don't know, I'll call that 500 people in the congregation. I want to look at all my stuff, 500 to 1,000. I want to look at all my stuff. What kind of time commitment to get somebody to come in and let me know where I'm at?
Yeah, definitely. It would really depend on the church, of course, but for the most part, time commitment, it could be as little as, a few days to maybe as much as, a few weeks, few months if it's a large organization to evaluate. And most churches do not fall in the category of that few months of, of investment in that. Money-wise, particularly with us, Lamb Telecom does churches and faith-based organizations for free. We do consultative stuff completely free of charge. That's our ministry piece. But as far as businesses go, we generally charge $200 an hour for the consultative fees. And you might be looking for, if you're doing a complete overhaul or really, I guess, just an overview of where you're at from a security standpoint, we might contract out some sort of provider to do a penetration test, which is where they'll go in and find out what's wrong.
Yeah.
And really that could range from as low as a few $100 to as high as several thousand, depending on what's involved in that.
Okay, so
pretty
variable.
It is very
It gives us
variable.
a couple bumpers
Yeah.
To go over. Okay, so people want to get a hold of you because they're like BK was just sharing about, so some of his family, my family, me personally. Man, this is such a pain. I haven't done it like in 5 years ever or whatever. How do they get a hold of Zach Norris, owner of Telecom, owner of Lamb Telecom? I've got right here, by phone, if you're old school like that, by phone, BK, 720-927-1997,
Yep.
1997.
And we like phone calls. That's
cool,
our preferred.
Cool, yeah, and I like talking to people too.
Yeah.
But email Zach, Z-A-C-H, at lambtele.com. So LAMBTELE.com.
Spells Lamb Telecom.
That's
I thought
right.
it was creative. It is
It's
not
just been a
fun over
nightmare.
the phone.
You try to get clever and you're like,
I was like, oh man.
So telecom.com, you're like, dang
Yeah,
it backfired on me. And then with the website, so that's lambtele.com, right? So it spells Lamb Telecom, LAMBTELE.com.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
That's
All right.
great.
Any parting words? I'll give you the parting words, brother, and then I'll just close it out.
Yeah, I would just say be prepared. And the other thing too, and I was on another podcast a while back, but the biggest thing was, be humble too. Know that you probably don't know everything when it comes to cybersecurity. And that's really tough for IT guys because generally we like to think that we've got it all together. Oh man, do we not. It is a fantastic idea to just at least reference with someone else.
Yeah.
And bounce ideas off of each other. So yeah.
See, you got know-it-alls too?
Yeah.
The overlap's just crazy, BK, because everyone's like, no, I'm a cop, I'm a this, I'm a that. Like, just do the thing, man.
Yeah.
Got it.
We run into that every
Awesome.
day.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. And guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank
Good
you.
seeing you again.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do this again sometime and
Yeah.
get all our stuff as we're getting our stuff all caught up and all that. But National Preparedness Month, there's not going to be a good time to do it, so make it September. I'm challenging you right now. This one is, I'm glad I heard this, but having that stuff on your radar, I'm going to be posting stuff all month. So, on Facebook, it's Jimmy Graham. Look for my picture. On what else? YouTube, it's going to be Abel Shepherd, Protect Culture Podcast, obviously. And then the folks that are following us on Patreon is Abel Shepherd. But there's going to be vehicle. There's going to be in your home. I just did my estate planning. It's going to be checking your tires. It's going to be all of that stuff. But right now in the cyber thing, man, they might be bumping around right now, right?
Yeah.
In your business that is your livelihood and as a small business, I can just say, man, that could be end game right there, So check it out. So appreciate you, appreciate you, appreciate you, all that, the people calling in. And until we see you again, guys, God bless each and every one of you. Take care of one another. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again for another episode. Please be sure to follow us and support us on all of the social media. That's Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. All of that starts by visiting ableshepherd.com.